Welcome, Triple X Restaurant. You can tell if you're, I think you can hear them in the back. This is a pretty full place here today, and Golden Black Live is what you're watching. And these guys next to me, that being Stacy and Brian, are going to listen intently because we'll need to be able to talk above the pitch here, so to speak. But a lot to talk about, guys, as we head into another important weekend for Purdue football. We'll start with Purdue football. Stacy, the Boilermakers, and Northwestern tomorrow. Whether or not going to be the greatest, may not be a lot of people in the stands, but it's a very important game for Purdue.
It's a very important game for both teams, obviously. I mean, Northwestern knows that it needs to win its last two games to be bowl eligible, so there's no doubt that they're going to come in really kind of raring to go and really wanting to get a big road win. But yeah, I mean, it's senior day for Purdue. Always want to win that game. But I think just generally with the way the season has gone for Purdue, they've gotten, you've seen the progress. I don't think we can call it momentum. You know, Brian, you've written a couple times in the last couple weeks about, you know, where are they at kind of momentum wise right now, but I think definitely you get a win this week or one win in the next 2 weeks. I think you can call that momentum, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it isn't just momentum in the moment, so to speak, but also you want some momentum going into the offseason too, because what you want to do is you're obviously a better football team this year than you were last year,
yep.
But you want to have more to show for it than you have right now. 1 win to 3 wins on paper is very much progress. I think the progress has lied more in the eye of the beholder than it has in the results to this point, and you would really like to change that. You'd like to take it from a place where it's like, well, you knew it when you saw it, to, well, we actually have this to show for it. So Purdue's got a big opportunity here with a schizophrenic Northwestern team and then a very troubled Indiana team here to go into the offseason with some distinct momentum.
Northwestern's been interesting, though, because they have played so well, albeit against Penn State. They beat Penn State badly on the road. They beat Wisconsin. They obviously pulled a big upset last week. They beat up Wisconsin at home and win at Notre Dame. Brian, you've looked at them a lot this week, the Wildcats. What are we going to see?
Well,
you call them schizophrenic, so that was a start.
When you go back through a lot of the coverage Northwestern this year, the one word you hear a lot from Pat Fitzgerald is the dreaded immaturity. And you know what we've seen from Purdue and some of its higher profile sports the last couple of years is immaturity and how much of a toll that's taken on basketball and maybe to a lesser extent football. And I think that immaturity kind of shows in their results. You know, this is a team that's beaten Wisconsin, the only team in the Big Ten who's done that this year. It's won at Penn State. Penn State's not great, the way maybe as good as we thought they'd be at the start of the year. Then obviously they scored 43 points at Notre Dame to beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a lot to do with that, but still Northwestern has shown it can be a very good football team. It just sometimes it refuses not to be because of its own failings, its own inconsistency. So trying to make any predictions for this game is really difficult to do because you just don't know which one's going to show up.
Well, and I think we can almost make that case for Purdue right now too.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
think even though that you've seen them get better, you know, Danny Anthrop goes down the offense, you're like, what's going to happen with the offense now? I think the offense has really struggled the last 2 weeks. You know, there were tons of pressure last week. I don't think that's going to be the case this week with Northwestern. It's not the same kind of front. It's not the same kind of defense that they've had with, you know, against Nebraska and Wisconsin. But Purdue needs somebody on offense to do something. I mean, I think Akeem Hunt has to be the guy this week that gets the running game going. You know, they couldn't really get that going last week, and that hurts their offense. This offense needs to be a balanced offense. It's not a pass-happy, able to win by throwing the ball right now with Austin Appleby. So, and then Purdue's defense has been up and down. They started the season, I thought, really good playing in the secondary, and then all of a sudden they can't stop anybody throwing the ball. They haven't been able to stop anybody running the ball. So I think we can kind of say that for both teams this week, that you don't really know who's going to show up.
Yeah.
Well, bringing you all, if you're just joining us, we are live at Triple X Family Restaurants here, as they say, on the hill but on the level. It's a big weekend for a number of reasons. Not only is our next guest at 2:20, Mitch Daniels, will be joining us, Purdue's president, and also Purdue Pete's celebration. They have an annual kind of a celebration here that will take place tomorrow morning, but we'll have some Purdue Pete's joining us as well. Part of the fanfare that takes place on a daily basis here at Triple X. We also want to thank our other sponsors, John Basham and the folks at Basham Rental, and of course State Farm agent Trent Johnson from Hilton Garden Inn. When tomorrow's a big day, stay at HDI tonight, and we have Pete behind us. You're not on for like 40 minutes, so we're glad to see you. So
that'd probably be one of the worst guests, somebody who couldn't talk.
Yeah, I know. That might be better sometimes in our situation. I don't know. At least I'll speak for myself. Stacy, you look at senior day, and obviously, Brian, the two of you and watch these guys develop. Landon Fichter is certainly a great story as a walk-on coming in and making not only really a huge impact in this program with 10 interceptions, but also just doing what everybody said he couldn't.
Yeah.
Does he epitomize this class, or how do you look at it?
I think it's interesting. I think I talked to quite a few seniors this week, and Justin Sins kind of mentioned that he didn't. There was no kind of top shelf 4-star kind of guy in this class, but all of them were kind of underrated, but kind of seizing the moment anyway, and kind of looked at that way, kind of those underdog kind of guys who have really come to be really key parts of this team. Certainly this season you've had as many as 10 seniors start, I think 10 or 12, something along those lines, and Sean Robinson is a guy that I would look at kind of like the Landon Fichter. Sean has gone through a lot as well in his career, moving positions, but Landon is kind of that tough. When you say Boilermaker, I think people think of Landon Fichter just because of the way he plays. He's not the biggest guy, he's not the fastest guy, but he's going to go out there and kind of give you everything that he has, which, again, can I say, why in the world was he benched? Can I just use this again to continue to use my platform? How in the world do you bench Landon Fichter?
Yeah.
I don't care if he's had a bad game coverage. I don't care if he missed a tackle. He's one of your best players. I mean, he's going to lead the team in tackles again. He's going to lead the team in interceptions again. Twice he's done that in his career now for a kid, like you said, who was a former walk-on. So, yeah, I genuinely like a lot of these guys in the senior class, really good guys.
Is that an indication, though, of maybe why everybody feels like this group has really lifted the entire situation? They're likable, but they're also hard-working guys.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank Purdue Pete for being here, so I no longer have the largest head on the set. Still the hardest, but not the largest. Yeah. Anyway, we were talking about Landon Fichter. The thing I really like about Landon Fichter, and I think is really important for Purdue, is in situations like this, it's not always about individual talent, size, strength, speed. It's about the way people respond to you, the sort of elements, intangible elements you bring to the field. And there's not a tougher guy, maybe on this whole damn campus, than Landon Fichter. And I think that's really valuable for Purdue's defense. Here's a guy who's broken every bone in his body playing football for Purdue University, and is smart, is experienced. He's a leader. People respond to him. He's a great kid by every account. He's a great story too. You shouldn't play because you're a great story, but it adds to what I respect about him. He's only here because the head coach didn't know his name and invited him to walk on. And but no, I really think he's been a great player for Purdue, a really valuable player for Purdue, and I still, why Purdue wanted to take him off the field a couple weeks ago in favor of someone else is still kind of beyond me. But I'm glad he's getting his opportunity to close out on the field.
Landon Fichter has Ross Fiechner, I think, to thank for that opportunity. But he obviously did everything he could. Every second he's been on the field pretty much for Purdue to get the job done. Other guys, though, Ryan Russell's been an interesting story because there's been so much made about his abilities and was he going to have a big sack here? Was he going to join the den of defensive ends? There's been a different approach in some of the things you've written this week and talked to Ryan about really what has been his impact. Greg Hudson, the defensive coordinator, also kind of stands firm on what his contribution has been to this program.
Yeah, Kyle, I thought did a great job on the radio feature this week with Ryan, and Ryan has always been a really honest guy. And before the season, he said, "I want to get 10 sacks." He does not have 10 sacks this season. And Greg Hudson, what he said is, it's a product of who Purdue is playing to some extent. When you're playing in this division, you're going to get tons of teams that are just going to run, and then the passing teams they've happened to play get the ball out of their hands relatively quickly. So from that standpoint, you're not seeing those kind of numbers, but he's doing his job, and we hear that all the time, do your job, do your job, do your job. And so I think Darrell Hazel and Greg Hudson have been pleased with Ryan in that sense, in the run game, to kind of just hold up the edge and do what he's supposed to do and be a leader too. I mean, obviously he's a captain, and when Sean Robinson went down, he had to be more of a vocal leader,
right.
And he talked about how hard that was for him because that's not in his personality. So I think he's really matured and grown over his whole career, but especially this year, just with the challenges that he's had. And he's been injured a lot too, so.
Yeah.
He's matured a lot since his first day at Media Day, where I think he had the multicolored hair, as I recall. interesting guy from that standpoint.
Yeah. The thing for Ryan Russell is, in the court of public opinion, he kind of takes a little bit of a pounding because maybe people think he wasn't supposed to be as good as, or he wasn't as good as maybe people thought he should be. Well, I'm not sure that's his fault. He's been a solid player at Purdue. I mean, I don't know if he's really been a disappointment per se. I don't know if that's his fault or if that's our fault because, he comes in the door, he looks the part of a really good player. He has a really good game against Western Michigan in the bowl game, and here we are saying, okay, this guy's got a chance to be a great player at Purdue. He's got a chance to be its next defensive end, and you always pay for the accomplishments of the people who came before you, and that raises the bar for him, and maybe that was unreasonable for him. He's not been a bad player at Purdue. He's not been a great player, but he's been a solid, good contributor for a team that hasn't been very good, but at the same time, I don't know how much more you really could have asked for him. People would like for him to have been better. He would like to have been better, but he's not been bad by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, and you look back, go ahead.
And I just want to say, he did say he has no regrets. He said, I left everything out there, I gave Purdue all I had. So that's kind of his view on his career and his season. He said he thinks this season was the best season he's had.
All right, let's now move on to one of our favorite topics, DeLapo McCarthy and what may happen. Maybe will he get we have somebody out there saying that he might get a lot of playing time.
Yeah, we saw
Saturday.
DeLapo this week in practice get some first and second team snaps at kind of what he has done most of the years, being a detached tight end. So kind of looking like a slot receiver. And so because I love DeLapo, I got all excited about that because I want him to get involved, and I think he's a really good player. Like in terms of, let's just talk about catching the ball. He catches the ball, which should be the most important thing when you're a receiver, in my opinion, or a tight end. Catch the ball. He catches the ball. So anyway, I asked Austin Appleby this week about that, and he said that DeLapo will play a, quote, major role on Saturday. So whether that actually happens or not, we will see. Because he could play 25 snaps and not get any passes thrown his way. To me, that's not a major role. To me, a major role is like actually making things happen on offense. So we'll see if that does happen or not.
I think what Purdue should do is put DeLapo McCarthy on the field every snap, throw it to him every play, get him 200 yards receiving, a couple touchdowns, win 55-7, just to troll the fans.
I think they'll take the 55-7 part of that. That's for certain. All right, next subject, on to Maui. Brian will take the world's shortest trip to Maui. He'll be there to cover all 3 games, but he's going to, he has little margin for error in his travel plans. But the Boilermaker basketball team, fresh off of I guess you could say an impressive 3-game streak to some extent, but the competition, Brian, will ramp up in a big way when Kansas State and Purdue meet at 2:30 on Monday afternoon. 2:30, that is Indiana time, 9:30 Maui time.
Yeah, everything changes now for Purdue. Obviously, to this point, Samford, IUPUI, and obviously Grambling, 3 opponents that just don't stack up against this level of competition. Purdue looked good doing it. I think better than some past teams probably would have. You remember the past few years, there were some scares against like High Point. Last year, they needed a late rally in the final minute to beat Northern Kentucky, and I don't remember those teams going on to be anything particularly special. So the fact that Purdue wasn't challenged in these 3 games bodes well for Purdue's kind of how ready they are to compete, but also it's a little bit unsatisfying in the sense you want to learn about a team before they go play real teams. And I don't know how much you've learned about Purdue since these games have been so one-sided. Everything obviously changes now. I'm repeating myself at this point, but Kansas State has grown men in its front line. So not only does the level of competition change, the style of basketball changes entirely too. To this point, these smaller teams have just swarmed the post. Purdue, to be good this year, is going to have to get a ton out of its posts. A.J. Hammond is going to be the focal point of its offense. It's the centerpiece of its entire team. Now they have to lean on Hammonds. Whereas before, opponents were able to take Hammonds away by just ganging up on them. And, the perimeter group was able to carry Purdue to 3 convincing wins. Now it's got to be Hammond's time.
Stacey, what's impressed you in the games that you've seen so far?
It's the obvious answer to say Vince Edwards, I suppose, but because I've done so much football stuff, I didn't get a chance to see the scrimmages, or I missed the first exhibition game. So actually being able to see him play, I was really impressed with his poise more than anything. I mean, we heard about the versatility, and I think that's pretty clear, obviously, but he doesn't play like a freshman to me. I think they do have maybe 1 or 2 freshmen who play like freshmen right now, but he doesn't. And I think that's such a big deal for obvious reasons because they're such a young team. They need those guys to be more mature than they are, age-wise. So I think that's been really impressive. And his rebounding, not just his scoring, but the way he goes and rebounds. Obviously you need other guys other than your big guys to do that. And so I've been really impressed with him. The one thing I'm interested to see in Maui, and Brian and I kind of talked talked about this, is what's Painter going to do with the rotation? We've kind of seen, especially in the last 2 games, it's kind of like a hockey situation where he's putting 5 guys in, taking 5 guys out, kind of a thing. So, where's Bryson Scott fit into all of that? Smotherman to an extent, I think. It'll be interesting to see what kind of minutes he gets. You certainly wouldn't think Taylor would play very much.
No.
So
he's the one, obviously.
So yeah, I think the bench is going to be considerably shortened, I would assume, going into Maui.
Do you agree? I mean, it'll be interesting to see, and yet you have that situation where Smotherman, for example, at least, and I did not go to the post-game press conference to heard him on the radio. He really went on to talk about all the good things Smotherman did last night. Now, again, a game that it looked like Scott and Smotherman, from my perspective, it might be guys that may lose some minutes, but who knows when the lights get turned on how it all will transpire for the young guy.
Yeah, I think Smotherman absolutely has a role on this team, but he's got to do what he needs to do to fill it. He's got to rebound. He's got to defend. He's got to play with a high energy level all the time. That's the one niche he has on this team that no one else can do. He's so athletic, and his athleticism doesn't come out unless he's playing with energy. And I think the last couple of games, you have seen that. You've also seen what you saw from him last night, with a career high 5 assists, was he made plays for other people as a passer. That's not been his MO. He's always been a good ball mover, just a guy who gets it out of his hands to where it's supposed to go, but he's never made plays for other people. That's not been his role either. You saw that from Kendall Stevens too. The last couple of games. They're making plays for other people as passers. I don't know if that's individual progress as players, or I don't know if that's all these other new guys wearing off on them, and this whole passing renaissance, for lack of a better term, just wearing off on everybody. Purdue centers have done a nice job passing the ball. Their wings have done a nice job passing the ball. Everyone's done a nice job passing the ball. It's really refreshing to see from a aesthetics of basketball standpoint.
Well, we'll check the site, certainly starting, probably starting on Sunday, but we'll have a lot of coverage from Maui. Ryan has been on your second trip to Maui, or third? Second. So I can't even remember the last time.
How many does Stacy have?
2007.
What's that?
2007.
It's been that long, and since the Boilermakers have been out there. So there are a lot of teams that have had their seasons not necessarily made, but really jump-started by good performances there.
Well, that was actually what jump-started Purdue's 2007 season.
Right.
You remember they lost to Georgia Tech, but then they came back, beat Oklahoma and DePaul, and parlayed that into beating Virginia, a ranked Virginia team at home in the Big Ten ACC, on a Terrence Crump buzzer beater, and that kind of got the ball rolling for their whole season. Ended up going back to the NCAA tournament, and then went back the next couple of years. So Maui was really important for Purdue last time they went there, and they're in the same situation now they were back then, so it could have the same effect for this team.
All right, get quick. I know we'll have predictions on the site shortly. I'm back to Purdue Northwestern. Why are we all picking Purdue to win?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I have no idea.
Everybody says the same thing, but is that just because is familiarity breeding contempt here, or is it just the opposite of that, or what do you think?
I'm picking Purdue because I think Northwestern is wildly inconsistent. I could see them just coming and not being very good. I think Purdue's healthier now. As I said in my prediction, their defensive front's not held together with popsicle sticks and scotch tape anymore.
Yeah.
I think Frankie Williams back is huge. I think they're putting their 4 best defensive backs on the field now for the first time this season. I think the bye week gave Akeem Hunt a chance to get healthy. I think it gave him a chance to get some things figured out offensively. I don't think Northwestern's the pass rush the last 2 opponents were, and that's really undermined Purdue. And I just think this is a much more favorable matchup.
Stacy?
Yes.
Got to take everything.
No, I just know that we need to get the president on properly. So
We don't want to keep him waiting, but no. Check the site here shortly because we'll have our predictions up. All right, we're going to take a 2-minute break and bring President Mitch Daniels on for a hard-hitting interview. You can get as hard-hitting as it's going to get at the Triple X, that's for sure. We'll look forward to having you stay with us, and we'll be back in 2 minutes on Golden Black Live.